My picture on the national website.
All right, cool. National website for what?
Vision Zero.
All right.
And we have a bunch of people here. So I'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Sea Valley MPO Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Advisory Committee to order. If we could have a roll call to establish a quorum.
Mr. Chair, if you could designate which side of the,
Start down at the end down there.
Mr. Waller?
Jess Waller, Las Cruces, BPAC Citizen Representative.
Vanessa Morales Romero, City of Las Cruces.
Andrew Bencomo.
Erica Christensen.
Sulin Acosta, New Mexico State University.
Ashley Curry, Town of Mesilla representative.
Go ahead, Jim.
Jim Wilcox here.
And Deputy Ryan Nunez from the town of Mesilla.
And George Pearson, City of Las Cruces representative. So we'll go to approval of the agenda. Is there any changes?
No, Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll second that motion, Jim Wilcox.
You have to make the motion.
Oh, I'll make the motion to approve the agenda, Jim Wilcox.
Ashley Curry, second.
We have a motion, a second to approve the agenda. On favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're at approval of the minutes for our October 17th meeting. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll hear a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Andrew Bencomo, so moved.
Ashley Curry, second.
We have a motion, a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? We're on item 4, public comment. Anyone for the public wish to come? Seeing none, we'll move to action items. We have a performance measure 1, safety target recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like at this time to introduce Ms. Katerina Provingi.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Chair. This is the Mesilla Valley MPO 2024 Safety Performance Measures. So 23 CFR 490 requires each and every MPO to set performance measures for safety. This is done annually. The last time we did this was last year in 2022 when we adopted the performance measures for calendar year 2023. So the safety performance measure requires that measures known by the state as targets have to be adopted in these 5 following areas. They are number of fatalities, number of serious injuries, the rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, or as I'm going to say VMT, rate of serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. The New Mexico Department of Transportation has released its proposed metrics for 2024, and that's what we're going to be going over right now. So there were methodology changes this year that have not been done before. The Federal Highway Administration states performance measures are required to be identical between the Highway Safety Plan, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and the Highway Safety Improvement Plan. Changes were created by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IJA. They require the Highway Safety Plan to cover 3 years. So new rules mandate that NHTSA measurements hold steady or show improvement in a 3-year period. So either it needs to remain the targets for the year need to remain the same in those 5 areas, or they need to show improvement. So in response, NMDOT has decided to use this year to reevaluate how the performance measures are set. Excuse me. Usually the 5-year moving averages are used to set the safety measures for that assigned year. The 5-year moving averages, the problem with them is that they are limited to follow the crash trends, which have been increasing over the last several years, as you remember from last year, and you'll see in some of the following slides. And NMDOT finds that unacceptable. NMDOT's HSIP and HSP will both hold steady or show declining numbers, which accurately demonstrates NMDOT's commitment to improving safety outcomes. So the number of state fatalities, we have the number of state fatalities since 2010. The red line represents the 5-year moving average, and now we have a third number on the graph, which is now the performance measure. So the performance measure, I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself. So looking at the preliminary reported number for fatalities from 2021 to 2022, it does show a decrease of 3.3%. And the 2024 measure for total fatalities is 4.3% lower than what is projected in the 5-year moving average. As I mentioned before, either the targets or performance measures are to be either showing a steady trend or showing a decrease. In this case, the performance measure is showing a decrease. These are the number of state serious injuries. The preliminary reported number of serious injuries shows an increase of 3.4% from 2021 to 2022. The 2024 measure for the total number of serious injuries is remaining the same at 1,018.6 as the target for 2024. So these are the state fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, or state fatality rate. Preliminary reported number of fatalities per 100 million VMT shows a decrease from 2021 to 2022 by 3.7%. The 2024 measure for fatalities per 100 million VMT is in actuality 5.5% lower than the 5-year moving average. So the target is lower, and it is set at 1.689. The state serious injuries per 100 million VMT. Preliminary reported numbers does show an increase of 3% in the serious injury rate from 2021 to 2022. The 2024 measure for serious injuries per 100 million VMT is 1.8% lower than the 5-year moving average, and that target or the performance measure will be at 3.8. The state non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So the 2021, from 2021 to 2022 does show a 1.4% decrease in preliminary numbers. The 2024 measure for non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries is approximately 6% lower than the 5-year moving average. So the performance measure, or the target, will be set for 2024 at 200. So the purpose of the performance standards from the state of New Mexico in accordance with federal regulations is to monitor crashes of motorized vehicles, bicycles, and pedestrians, paying attention to fatalities and serious injuries specifically. The safety performance measure mandated by Congress has increased awareness and dialogue about safety issues around the country. The measures have motivated jurisdictions to seek solutions to underlying factors of crashes. The trend lines are indicators of very complex factors that cause crashes. These factors are explored further in the 2021 NMDOT Annual Safety Report. This report is available online and was published on April 26, 2023. And keep in mind that the safety numbers do go over the year 2021 because there is a 2-year lag before the crash data is released and available to the public. So we, the Mesilla Valley MPO, do conduct our own annual safety report, and that will be completed later, usually January, February, so early next year. We will release the next safety report, early next year. And as we do that, a presentation will be given to all of our committees, including you all. The state and the Mesilla Valley, and we, the Mesilla Valley MPO, are committed to reduce fatalities and serious injuries. We request that the BPAC recommend the endorsement of the state safety performance measures. We will bring the safety performance measures to Policy Board for their approval at the December 13th meeting. I will now stand for comments and questions.
Okay, thank you. I guess this goes, as we've discussed before, we had a pretty good discussion during the last meeting as a discussion item. But just looking at the numbers, the 21 to 22 shows a slight decrease, but then the projections for 23 shows an increase again. So in some ways, the targets are just kind of wishful thinking. And this is like half of the job. This is a report that shows what's happened, but then there's not a corresponding, or I don't know if there is one, a corresponding report that shows what steps is NMDOT and the different governmental entities taking to try to address that problem and reduce the issue. We don't have different solutions. I just had heard a quick 1-minute blurb from Secretary Buttigieg. And so some of what he said was, often the answers are simple. Simple is not the same as easy, but often the answers are relatively simple. Proven solutions like safer speed limits, especially in residential areas, protected bike lanes and bus lanes that are not a frill on a transportation project, they're a life-saving measure. So we talk about these things as projects come up, but do we really go out and try to promote those as that's what the core need of the project is? And is there other documents from the state, or I know we have like our comprehensive plan talks about it briefly. The county has a comprehensive plan that probably talks about it briefly also, but there's no actual action steps that say, okay, in the next 3 years, we're going to evaluate speed limits, for example, on all our roads, our surface roads. Are the speed limits appropriate for the roads? Seems like just in the past week, I haven't seen them in the news to be confirmed, but I've heard from the Facebook reports, we had 2 pedestrian fatalities. That's going to drive our numbers way in the wrong direction. So what steps, are there places to figure out how we can do actual steps to reduce these numbers and meet these targets?
Mr. Chair, this is Andrew Ray for MPO staff. I would say that you have correctly identified a number of the shortcomings as they currently exist in the federal law and in the federal requirements. There is a disconnect between the act of reporting and then implementing changes on the basis of that past history. Unfortunately, as things stand right now, there's just no tools in the toolbox to implement some of those changes. Right now, broadly speaking, and I'm happy to also defer to Ms. Sherman, who's also here from the DOT, if she wishes to say anything on this subject. But as it stands right now, the penalty for failing to meet the targets on the statewide level is the mandatory allocation of a certain percentage, and I don't remember what that percentage is, of safety money then I'm saying this a bit backwards. Ordinarily, states have the ability to use some of their HSIP monies, a certain percentage of HSIP monies on non-safety projects. The penalty for failing to meet the safety targets is you then have to use all of the HSIP monies or the highway safety improvement monies for safety projects. However, the state of New Mexico is already using 100% of their HSIP monies for safety projects, so there's really no federal stick remaining that could be used with the way that the laws are written right now to further coercively incentivize, I guess, further reporting or action on the part of the state. The other big gap is municipalities and counties where, as things stand right now, the federal regulations don't really touch them at all. The closest it gets to is here with us at the MPO, and as we have discussed in the past many times, I'll mention it again here, the MPO is not an implementing organization. We own not a single centimeter of transportation infrastructure that we can implement a safety project on. So I'll say it's been a little bit misguided in the way that the federal government has attempted to implement some of these safety performance measures. They're not targeting the correct entities to at least some extent, in my opinion. And I know that is cold comfort for me to, not really comfort at all for me to say this to this committee this evening, but unfortunately that is the reality of the situation. So as I have said in years past, I'll say again, we as staff cannot lobby either on the state or on the national level. But those of you who are private citizens or your funding source allows you to engage in these sorts of conversations with legislators on the state and national level, please feel free to do so. And that really is the maximum extent of what it is that I can do to push this boulder a little bit down the road.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Ms. Sherman?
Yes, I'm Valerie Sherman, NMDOT. Let me get to work and let me do some research and see what I can find out, if there are programs that are being started and so forth. And hopefully I can get some info back to you.
That would be great.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
If we could maybe, you could work with staff and it might be appropriate for a presentation to us at some point, a discussion item. Ms. Curry?
Well, I'd like to add, it's newly started, but the NMDOT has the vulnerable road users meeting that they are working on. And I think maybe that would be the first place that we might see some actionable items coming out of the vulnerable road users. And then, of course, there's the NMDOT pedestrian and bike safety plan. So those would probably be places to review and look at, and then maybe be able to identify projects therein that we can push towards implementing here locally. And along that topic, I think continuing to visit some of the things that we've seen locally, for example, the crossing of the outfall channel at Valley Drive, and that's, kind of the Bermuda Triangle of county, city, and DOT right there. But that would be one example that's been brought up for many years as a safety hazard, and it hasn't been addressed. So those are my thoughts.
Mr. Chair, if I may, again, this is Andrew Ray. I do, however, on the positive side, do want to re-highlight what Ms. Provingi talked about, that there has been a paradigm shift on the part of the state about starting to do aspirational target setting rather than just targeting the moving average. So that has been a standing complaint of this committee in particular, but it's also been a complaint of the policy board itself, and I believe it has been a complaint of entities around the state. So that in and of itself is a relatively a bureaucratic, I will admit it, but it is a step in the right direction.
Right, that's where we need to get these aspirational goals and the actual goals to match up a little bit better with action from implementation of different solutions.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Andrew.
Andrew Bencomo. So that's exactly what the point I was going to make too, George, was here's the goals, but what are the actions that we're going to take to meet those goals? That's the question. And not just NMDOT, because many of these fatalities happen on roadways that are not NMDOT roadways. So it needs to be NMDOT, municipalities, in our case, Las Cruces, Doña County, not a municipality, but a governmental entity, and Mesilla. But throughout the state, it needs to be municipalities along with counties and NMDOT all together. Of course, NMDOT is probably going to be the biggest driver of that, to push entities to do that. So that's just something that I hope NMDOT can hear. I hope City of Las Cruces, County of Doña, Town of Mesilla, and MSU all hear this so that they can hopefully connect with NMDOT from that funneling from the federal to the state to the localities and start working on some joint plans together so that they can get some, for example, you named the Valley Drive crossing of the channel there. That is a perfect connectivity of city, county, and state all together there. So that is a great example right there of projects that they can work together on, and that hopefully will get the ball rolling and keep the snowball moving. So thank you very much.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Jim Wilcox for the record. Can you go back a couple of slides? I don't remember which one it is. There was one with the text. So maybe back forward again.
It was the discussion or the conclusion?
Says the measures, maybe this is it, the measures have motivated jurisdictions to seek solutions to underlying factors of crashes. And I think that's what we're talking about here. I don't know, who are jurisdictions?
Jurisdictions are the owners and operators of the facilities. So in our case, the owning jurisdictions within our area are City of Las Cruces, Doña County, Town of Mesilla for their local roads, and NMDOT. Those are the jurisdictions, the MPO member jurisdictions.
So when the crash data comes to them, doesn't that say that they are to seek solutions to underlying factors of crashes?
One would certainly hope.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to get too snarky about it. So how can we find what they've decided to do?
Well, Mr. Wilcox, that's kind of exactly the chair's point about the disconnect between the aspirational goals and the implementation there is that disconnect. It is real, it does exist, and unfortunately, it's not something that the MPO can really.
Yeah, I get that. We don't have authority to force these things, but how do we find out what they've decided to do?
Well, we vet the projects through the TIP process, so it's definitely within the purview of the BPAC if they are unsatisfied with a TIP project, for example. They could vote to not recommend approval of it to the policy board if they're dissatisfied to a sufficient degree with a particular project, just as an example.
Okay, and how do we find the transportation improvement plans?
The tip is posted on the state tip website. We can distribute that to the members, but I mean, we have a quarterly, the tip is the quarterly amendment cycle that we would bring before this committee on the first month of every quarter. Those are the projects that contribute to the tip. But the standing tip is a statewide document that this MPO contributes to.
Then I would recommend that we receive that information, or we find it, we get directed at the link or something so we can look
We
at
can
it.
provide that link.
That'd be really great. The other thing I wanted to point out is, as far as local jurisdictions having influence on this, I want to note that the city of Las Cruces has not had a bicycle pedestrian coordinator for at least a year. Previous to that, their bicycle coordinator lasted 1 year. Previous to that, it was at least 2 years before they hired the one who only lasted 1 year. And that position is to help improve bicycle pedestrian safety. When a jurisdiction doesn't have somebody in that position to follow those tip recommendations, then I see that it's a passive. It's just passive. Nothing's happening. And then we cannot tell whether a death, pedestrian or a bicycle death, could have been averted if a person was in that position and had done something about it to prevent that accident. Thank you.
Any other committee members?
Mr. Chair, Jeff Swaller, I just had a few comments. I had one question. Go back to the chart where you showed the New Mexico statistics. Now, I'm just reading this article, and I'm rather horrified that New Mexico stands worst in the country.
Which one specifically?
Yeah, this one will work. How does Las Cruces compare to New Mexico State? Do we have that data?
So that will be provided, Mr. Chair, Mr. Waller, that will be provided in the Mesilla Valley MPO's annual safety report.
Okay.
That we will be presenting to you either in January or February,
Okay.
and it will be published on our website as well.
Yeah, okay, great. So we're waiting on that data. We're anxious to see it. We want to see if Las Cruces is at par with New Mexico or worse, and New Mexico being the worst in the country, and New Mexico being, I'm reading here just articles, 9 fatalities per year in Las Cruces between 2011 and 2020, which is 60% above the national average, and it all comes down to a point of what is NMDOT or the City of Las Cruces doing to address that horrendous figure. And it comes down to what actions are being taken. And we don't know. The gentleman over here made an excellent point about there used to be a person who had, I guess, a role in making determinations as to causality of fatalities. I'm not even sure if we have that. So we're kind of struggling with a trend that looks very disturbing with no concrete way of addressing it that I'm seeing, and that's, to me at least, is concerning.
Mr. Chair, may I add another comment, please?
Please, go ahead.
Ashley Curry for the record. So it's occurring to me as I'm listening to Mr. Wilcox and to Mr. Waller that I think one of the things that ends up happening is some of us, like me for the school district, end up being a stakeholder on some of the projects. And so we see projects coming through and we get to review them at the 60, the 30, 60, 90% mark. But I think that there's a little bit of a lack of education. We're not engineers, we're not transportation professionals. And so when we come to the meeting, we defer to the transportation professionals. And I think there's an opportunity here for us to train those of us who are committed to the cause that may not be transportation professionals. And I'm just wondering if the MPO would have funds, or if this is something we could ask the DOT to do some really ongoing in-depth training. And an example for that would be the University Avenue project between Main Street and Avenida de Mesilla. Andrew Bencomo has mentioned before, and I've backed him up on this, that the speed limit set to 35 miles an hour. And as a stakeholder in that meeting with the DOT, I asked them to lower that speed limit to 30, and the state engineers laughed me off the table and said, "You don't know anything. You're not a transportation professional." Now, it's intimidating when you come forth and say something like that, and somebody just says, you don't have credentials. That's not the way this works. I just feel like there's a way, because that is a proven measure of fatality rates, is the higher speed limit. So I just wonder if there's a way to educate those of us who are advocates on what the laws are, what the best practices are. How do we get to the point where, we have our voices with some teeth behind them, other than going through becoming traffic engineers or urban planners ourselves?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Curry, we will reach out to NMDOT and see what we can do in the vein of getting some, I guess I'll call it engineering training type presentations to the BPAC within 2024.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Andrew?
Andrew Bencomo for the record. I just wanted to maybe clarify some terms or the positions or whatever. I believe the position Mr. Waller was talking about and Mr. Wilcox were talking about was the active transportation coordinator for the city. So just so everybody knows, that is the position, as active transportation coordinator, and it has not been filled. It's been a little while. I understand they may be close to filling it now, maybe, but that's the position, and their job really should be at the very forefront with community development in looking at plans that are coming through and looking at transportation safety and those type of things. And then the education piece and working with things like if they're going to implement speed cameras for the city, they should be working with that piece. So it's very complicated. But anyway, it's the active transportation coordinator is what it is. Thank you.
Mr. Bencomo, thank you for correcting that or informing me on that. I appreciate it.
And sorry, Mr. Chair, one more thing. The active transportation coordinator was on the hiring committee for that. They offered the person a position, and he ended up declining it because of the commuting. So we're back to the drawing board with no candidates currently.
Is there any other discussion? So I'll hear a motion to recommend approval of the safety targets to the policy board.
Andrew Bencomo, I recommend approval of the targets as they stand.
This is Jim Wilcox, and I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to recommend approval to the policy board. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So that item passes. That was our only action item, so we're on to committee and staff comments. City of Las Cruces, do you have any comments for us today?
Mr. Chair, Vanessa Morales Romero, City of Las Cruces. I just wanted to update you. I believe many of you may have noticed on Loman and Del Rey, we were doing some mill and overlay work. I believe they've already finished striping the eastbound lanes of Loman, and they'll be working on the westbound lanes tomorrow, I believe, so they should be done soon. And then they'll be jumping to Del Rey. And the Fourth and Picacho Hawk system will start construction soon, and it'll be done by July. That's all I have.
That's the Hawk signal.
Yes.
Okay, Doña County is absent. Town of Mesilla, do you have anything, any comments for us?
No, not at this time.
NMSU?
No comment at this time.
Okay, while we're on the NMSU item, I did notice League of American Bicyclists had sent out their bicycle-friendly communities and reports. And so in reviewing bicycle-friendly university, I see that UNM must not have done an application. They've dropped off. NMSU is still on the list, but they have to be more than 4 years old. So reapplying for that, especially since UNM isn't there, would be a good thing to do. Las Cruces Public Schools, do you have any updates for us?
We do not have any updates from LCPS at this time.
And MDOT?
Mr. Chair, quick update on the interchange on I-10, I-25. The contractor's completed all the deck work. He's just refining some minor details. So we're getting really close to opening things up, and we're expected to see that first of the month, around the first full week of the month or so.
Okay, thank you. MPO staff.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Andrew Ray again. Just a couple things. First one is with regard to the transition process. We're still waiting to hear from the City of Las Cruces about the results of the cost allocation study. This is not a surprise, as I was told to not expect it before November, so I guess in a way we're still on schedule. We also have successfully filled the vacant associate planner position. However, the paperwork for that has not been completely concluded yet, so I'm not in a position to introduce that individual to this committee tonight. This is the final meeting of this committee for 2023, so I certainly hope to have updates on both of these topics when we next convene in January. So I believe that is everything that I have for tonight. Does anybody have any questions?
So we had some email going on about committee member attendance, so I just wanted to remind the committee and let you remind the committee.
Yes, we thank you. This is the final meeting of the year, so at the start of the new year, the records are expunged. This particular committee did not have anybody default on their attendance requirements this year, so yay, everyone, keep up the good work. Please, more of the same next year. But everyone starts with a clean slate in January, so any and all absences that you have as of this evening are now off the table, and we start afresh in January. So thank you to everyone for faithful attendance this year.
Okay, thank you. On to committee member updates. I guess I'll comment on this past weekend. There was the World Day of Remembrance, which is an international remembrance of people lost through traffic fatalities. Vulnerable Road Users of New Mexico led a presentation. They had a proclamation at City Council, and at Centennial High School there was a remembrance last Friday night that had a number of people. I attended that, and that was very good, thoughtful, remembering some of the people that we lost. Was kind of heartfelt. They counted 67 vulnerable road user fatalities in the past 10 years. And unfortunately, it seems like that will continue to go up much faster than we want. So makes our previous discussion really important. Any other committee members have comments?
Mr. Chair.
Andrew?
Andrew Bencomo for the record. Thank you for bringing that up. I was going to mention the VRU, vulnerable, I can't say that word, vulnerable road users, VRU. Weekend was very moving. Friday was very beautiful, everybody out there. Saturday, unfortunately, I didn't make it. Sunday, the films that they had at Burrell, the college there, wow, very powerful. If you all get a chance to watch those, one of them, you can catch it on YouTube. It's called From 1 Second to the Next. It's about people texting and driving. It is so powerful. bring tissue when you watch it. The other one is the road project, that they showed that one. That one is more about designing roads and how they have changed some cities, and talks about the progression of from people in the streets to then cars in the streets, and pretty much that's it. So, but very good information. I was a little sad that not more people didn't come out for all of those events, but hopefully in the future, I think Barbara Toth did an amazing job. I think she'll do it again. And so hopefully that we can build some momentum on that. But if you do get a chance to watch that video, especially the one from 1 second to the next, and have probably young people watch that, it's very, very moving and very powerful. So thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Jim?
Jim Wilcox for the record. I also want to inform people that a study came out from Johns Hopkins University called Narrow Lanes Save Lives. There's a significant, as Andrew said, paradigm shift going on in the transportation planning kind of upper echelons about what works and what doesn't work. A lot of the earlier designs actually encouraged speeding, and although it's counterintuitive, people actually go slower when they're concerned about running into another car. And that's why a narrow lanes tend to cause traffic to slow down, making it more safe. So it's from Johns Hopkins University, just came out recently, Narrow Lanes Save Lives. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I just add an announcement? The annual Toys for Tots bike ride is back on. It will be on Sunday, December 3rd at 11 a.m., meeting at the community park in Mesilla and traveling 4.5 miles. They're going to be going down Motel because they weren't able to, they had to pay for a permit to go down La Llorona, which was quite pricey, and ending at Valley Pizza. And they have support of local law enforcement to escort us along the way. So please come and attend. It's a great opportunity for people of all levels to be on the roadway on bicycles. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I guess I'll just follow up on Jim's comment on that Johns Hopkins study. That goes directly to the University Avenue multimodal project, where during discussion here, even the presentation was part of the road was going to be a 12-foot lane and the other part of the road was going to be an 11-foot lane. And why we can't have an 11-foot lane through the entire project, both for this now shown as the safety item and consistency of the entire project. We're on to public comment number 2. Anybody? See none? I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Andrew Bencomo, second.
Without objection, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. See you next year.